You try to describe what God is like, it could be difficult or daunting. But when the people who wrote Bibles pondered the mystery of God, they consistently describe God's characters in this way: compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, overflowing with loyal love and faithfulness. We are going to look at the fourth phrase, loyal love. It translates the Hebrew word hesed, which is hard to translate to any language because it combines the ideas of love, generosity, and enduring commitment all into one. Had described an act of promise keeping love and motivated by personal care. Like in the story of Ruth. Ruth is a foreigner married to an Israelite man, but tragically her husband dies along with his brothers and his father. All Ruth has left is her widow mother-in-law, Naomi, who has nothing to give her. Naomi tells her she should go back to her peoples, but instead Ruth promises to stay by Naomi's side and take care of her. And as other people watch Ruth keep this promise over time, they call it an act of hesed. Notice that Ruth's hesed is not conditional or based on Naomi's word. Rather, it's an expression of Ruth's character. She just is a generous and loving person who keeps her word. That's present. Now, Ruth's loyal love is truly inspiring, but the one who shows the most enduring hesed in the Bibles is God. Like in the story about Jacob, who is treacherous liar, even to his own family. But despite that, God chose him and repeats the promise he made to Jacob's grandfathers, Abraham, that he would have a huge family through whom God would restore his blessing to the nation. And so 20 years later, when Jacob realized how undeserving he is, he says to God, I'm not worthy of all the hesed you have shown me. And he's right. But God's hesed was never about Jacob's word in the first place. It's in a display of God's generous, loyal to his promise. God's hesed continues into a story of Jacob's descendants, the Israelites. When they are enslaved by Pharaoh in Egypt, we're told that God remembered his promise to Abraham and Jacob. So God defeats Egypt and raises up Moses to liberate the people, to lead them into the promised lands. And into the story, this is called an act of hesed because it was about God keeping his word. Now, on the way to the promised lands, Israelites are scared of the nations around them and they doubted God can protect them. And so the people threatened to kill Moses and appoint a new leader to take them back to Egypt. God is understandably hurt and angry, but Moses steps in and says, forgive the sins of this people because of your great hesed. Notice that Moses asked God to forgive, not because the people deserve it, but because it's consistent with God's own character, and God agrees and he recommits himself to a people that don't want to be committed to him. In the Bible, God is loyal and loving for no other reason than it's unjust who God is. Of course, he wants his people to respond with hesed in return, but even when they don't, God's hesed remains. The prophet Hosea compared the Israelites' hesed to mourning the midst that here's one moment gone the next, but God's hesed is enduring. Like the celebrations of Psalm 136 that opens up saying, give thanks to the Lord for he is good, and then 26 times repeated, his hesed is forever. And so, after centuries of Israelites betraying the commitment to God, and after humanity's long history of violence and death, God still kept his promise in a dramatic, distracting way by becoming human and binding himself to us in the person of Jesus. And the people who follow Jesus of Nazareth say that in him they encountered the God of Israel, who is full of loyal love and faithfulness. Jesus is the ultimate loyal and loving human. And in his life, death, and resurrection, God opened up a new future for all of us and for all of creation. And God did this because he chose who God is: generous, loving, and eternally loyal to his promises. And when we experience the purity and power of God's loyal love and shown through Jesus, and it compels us to imagine why and how we can show back to God and to people around us. This is what it means to say that God is overflowing with loyal love.